Across the Aisle segment tonight. The White House Correspondents' Dinner was this weekend, and I can't blame you if you didn't tune in. The event is supposed to be a celebration of freedom of the press, although for the last 8 years it was a celebration of President Obama. But one interesting moment came when the president of the Correspondents Association, Jeff Mason, admitted that press access under President Trump has been very good. Take a look.
The press is still in the White House briefing room, and we are still on Air Force One. In fact, press access under President Trump has been very good. With all of the tension in the relationship, that aspect is often overlooked. We have had several press conferences, repeated opportunities to see and report on the president's meetings, and, with at least one notable and lamentable exception, good access to briefings with press staff and senior administration officials.
With me now, history professor and author of Obama's America, A Transformative Vision of Our National Identity, Ian Reifowitz. Ian, good to see you.
Good to see you again, Liz.
All right, Ian, give me your quick reaction to this. I mean, I don't think very many people expected Jeff Mason to stand up there and applaud press access under President Trump. The applause, as you saw in that video, was a bit lukewarm, but he's actually correct, and that's probably the most important part of the relationship between the press and the president.
Well, look, I think it's great that Mr. Mason told the truth. I had no expectations that he would do otherwise. I think, for the most part, the media tells the truth when it comes to Donald Trump, and this was really no exception. I don't blame Donald Trump for not going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I didn't watch it either. I know you said you didn't. Look, it's an event that is largely about inside. You know, it's an insider's event,
right.
And Donald Trump wants to position himself as the outsider. It's smart for him to position himself against the media, even as he gives them access, and he gives them big ratings, which means that they love him. If you remember, I think it was Les Moonves was talking last year, the president of CBS, about how he was saying that Trump improved his ratings and made billions of dollars for his company. So none of this really surprises me.
No, I mean, I guess it surprised me just a little bit. I mean, I expected more of the reaction that the crowd gave, kind of like, what, are you serious? You're applauding? You're applauding the access that we get to President Trump here? But Ian, let me ask you, we of course come from different sides of the aisle. Here, you're more of the liberal persuasion, I'm more of the conservative persuasion. 51% of Americans on both sides of the aisle say that the mainstream media is out of touch with mainstream America. As a liberal, I mean, you just said that you think that they mostly tell the truth about Trump. Do you feel that the media is out of touch with America?
Well, at 51%, I believe they're doing better than both of the major political parties. So, you know, if you want to look at that, I think most of the American people think that just about every institution is out of touch. So it's hard to draw too much from that one particular piece of
let me just ask you. Let me just ask you in a personal sense, though. Let me just ask you in a personal sense. Yeah. When you watch the media, when you see the mainstream media, you know, all the networks that President Trump criticizes, the publications that seem to have an agenda against them, do you feel that accurately represents the attitudes of the American people, or do you feel that they're elitist, in the Beltway, and out of touch with everyday America?
You know, I think it's an important question, and you posed it as one of two choices. I would argue that it's not the job of the media, whether it does it well or not, to be in touch with the people. It's the job of the media to tell the truth. It's the job of the media to present things that are factual, to call out things that are said by people in power that are not factual, and to speak truth to power. Whoever the person has the most power is, or whoever the people are in power, whether they're liberal or conservative, the media should treat them the same way and call them out when they are abusing their power, if they are abusing their power, and also just report what they're doing.
No, I don't disagree with you, but we also don't live in utopia. We don't see this from the mainstream media. I mean, especially given the fact that a lot of cable news, and I guess this is my show included here, we're opinion shows. You know, you get panels, you get interviews, you get opinions here, not just straight news, except on our network for 22 hours of the day. But it's kind of devolved, in a sense, from just calling out, just reporting the news and letting people decide, to having a sort of bias to it. And do you think that's a disservice to the American people in general?
I agree with you. I wish there was a bit less room, a bit less opinion and a bit more straight reporting. Not that I want to, give up my time to offer my opinion, or yours for that matter. But yeah, I think you're right. I do think you're right. Look, here's one of the things that I see. I hear people have talked about media bias. This goes back to Richard Nixon, right? Richard Nixon talked, and Spiro Agnew talked about, I believe, nattering nabobs of negativism, one of the great alliterations in American political history. But he railed against the liberal media. Why did he rail against the liberal media, Nixon and Agnew? Well, they had something to hide, right? And so I think it's very often that people rail against the media being biased because what they want to do is work the refs. They want to work the referees. They want to spoil the audience's opinion of the media so that when the media reports on them and tells the truth about what they're doing, that people just dismiss it as, oh, that's media bias. And we typically hear, yes, we do typically hear about liberal media bias. I think that's crazy. Even the mainstream media, if you look at what happened over the last few months of the campaign, the one word that a Gallup survey found that people associated with Hillary Clinton in terms of media coverage was emails. The words they associated with Trump were things like president, immigration, speech. They did a word cloud. The word email dwarfed all the other words. And that's from media reporting. That's from media bias.
Wait a second. Let me just get this straight. Are you suggesting you really think that there's no liberal media bias?
There is no liberal media bias. Let me say that directly.
You cannot mean that.
There is no liberal media bias. I said it and I meant it. Look at the coverage over the last year. Donald Trump got $2 billion of free media coverage during the primary season, and during the campaign season, the coverage of Hillary's emails dwarfed all the Trump scandals.
Right, he did. But Ian, we're not talking about the time. We're not talking about the bulk of the coverage. We're talking about the bias here. I mean, of the bulk of the coverage of Donald Trump, there was just a study issued by the Media Research Center that said something like between 92 and 98% of coverage on the 5 biggest issues associated with Donald Trump from the major media networks was all negative. I mean, that's not just neutral reporting. It's actually negative reporting. That's bias.
Well, that's something that I believe you're talking about is since Trump was inaugurated. So we each have a different thing that we're looking at. But I was looking at coverage during the campaign where there were 2 candidates on equal footing, Hillary and Trump. And the coverage of Trump was far more positive or less negative, depending on how you want to look at the math, far less negative than the coverage of Hillary Clinton. And there turned out to be no indictment on the emails. There turned out to be nothing even on Anthony Weiner's dirty laptop that James Comey started talking about.
Right.
And in fact, the survey I quoted you on with the word cloud was done by Gallup from July to September, before James Comey came out and spoiled the whole election with his email comments about Anthony Weiner's laptop.
But you have to understand that Gallup poll. You have to understand that word cloud, when it comes to emails, it doesn't mean that the word emails was associated negatively. I mean, this could have been news stories that said, oh, her emails, as touted by Donald Trump, are nonsense. That doesn't state it in and of itself. I mean, in my opinion, as you know, I think the liberal media is an important part of the Democratic Party. Without the liberal media, without that bias, without their help framing that narrative to support Democratic talking points and hack down Republicans, liberals wouldn't even get elected. We know this. We even saw collusion with those emails. Donna Brazile of the DNC giving Hillary Clinton the questions for the town hall. I mean, the idea to me that there is no liberal bias, that's absurd. Whether or not it impacted the election, we'll have to save that conversation for a different day. Ian, I thank you for being here.